I'm Elizabeth, a literary princess. If you are new here, welcome. I have a PhD in English literature with a focus on Victorian women novelists, and as you might expect, I love to read. I'm sorry if my voice is kind of off today. I have a cold, unfortunately. So, but yeah, today I have for you my February wrap-up. So I read 14 books in February, which is interesting because in January I felt like I was in a reading slump. And actually at the start of February I did too. But I realized it's not that I didn't want to read at all, it was that I did not want to read the books that I have. So as soon as I got a huge stack of books out of the library, I was flying. And I have actually already met my goal of reading 12 books from the public library this year. So I don't know what to tell you. I also went on a binge of books about cats, as you will see. So we've got 14 books to talk about, so let's jump in. The first book was a carryover from January, and it was my Elizabeth Gaskell project read for the month of January. This is Mary Barton by Elizabeth Gaskell. I do have a whole video on this. It does contain spoilers though, so do be aware of that. This was a reread, but I had no memory of it really. And I had given it 3 stars. And I'm like, past self, you are crazy because this book was phenomenal. I gave this 5 stars this time around. I loved it. Oh my goodness, Gaskell's writing is so good. Her depictions of poverty in Manchester are heartbreaking. Mary is a fantastic heroine. She is not perfect, she is a flawed person, but she decides, okay, I am going to do whatever it takes to make this situation right. And she does. I cannot even describe how fantastic this book was. So yeah, 5 stars. I don't know what my past self was doing with the 3 stars. I don't know how I don't remember this book. Okay, whatever self, you're weird. Next up is one that I read for one of the 2 events I participated in. This event is Feb Regency, where we read books that were written during the Regency period, here defined as 1795 to 1837, I believe. And this is Mary Hamilton by Anna Austen Lefroy. I think in my TBR I said this was a novella. That is giving it delusions of grandeur. This is a short story. It is 34 pages in the magazine it was originally published in. Anna Austen Lefroy is the niece of Jane Austen, and the short story was actually published as by a niece of the late Miss Austen, rather as under Lefroy's name. And I wanted to read this because I'm writing a conference paper. It was published in 1834, so toward the end of what counts for Feb Regency. And it was a little disappointing. It really reads more as if it's like an outline of a story. Like, it's a really good setup with this guy coming back from time in India and him wanting to, and like, he lived in this neighborhood with these families who were all kind of like intermingled. There were some cousins. He was in love with one of them. And then there was another set of cousins, one who, Mary Hamilton, was very poor. And so he's kind of like coming back and he's hoping that he can win the love of this girl, Julia, again. And he comes back to the neighborhood to find it like completely kind of different. And he goes to an old servant. He's like, so what happened? And she tells him the story of kind of what happened after he left. And like, there's a good concept there. And if it had been fleshed out, it probably would have been good. But it wasn't fleshed out. Like, we never really understood any character motivations or why things happened the way that they happened. And then like at the end, there's this choice made and I'm like, where did that come from? Girl. So I give this 2.5 stars. Now I'm like, crap, I have to write a conference paper about it. Or partly about it, but I do actually know what I'm gonna say in my conference paper. And I read another book for this conference paper later on, and I'll talk a bit more about it then. But yes, this was disappointing. I was really hoping that it would be better, but yeah, 2.5 stars. Next was one of my most anticipated releases of the year, which I got out of the public library. This is Through Gates of Garnet and Gold by Shannon McGuire. Book number 11, yep, 11 in the Wayward Children series, which follows children who have gone to portal worlds like Narnia and then come back. So this book, is like focused on my favorite character in the whole series, Nancy. The last book that really focused on her was book 1, so a while ago, Every Heart a Doorway. And I have found her fascinating since first reading book 1. She went to this world called the Halls of the Dead, where people act as like kind of human statues. The idea is for them to hold a pose and stand still as possible for as long as they can. And I just thought that was so interesting. And we really haven't seen much of the Halls of the Dead because in the first book, Nancy has come back there and is now going to Eleanor West's School for Wayward Children, which is a school where these children who have been to portal worlds go kind of to recuperate. And at the end of Every Heart a Doorway, Nancy goes back to the Halls of the Dead. And we see her briefly in, I think it's Come Tumbling Down, which might be book 5. It all gets a little blurry, you know? They all just kind of start going together. But I really wanted to see more, and I was so excited to be with Nancy again. And we are following her as she returns to Eleanor West's school to get help from her friends because the ghosts in the Halls of the Dead are killing the human statues, and she needs help to save her world. So I was expecting to adore this. I really thought it was going to be 5 stars, and it wasn't. It was 4 stars. Like, it was still good. I was so happy to be back with Nancy. I was really excited to see a bit of her interactions with Cade, because there's this kind of potential romance between them, maybe. We didn't actually get that much of them interacting with each other. It all felt very rushed, to be honest. It was really exciting. We got to see a ton of characters that we have not seen in a while, and that was cool. And I found the end very intriguing, which is all I'll really say about it, because obviously I don't want to give spoilers for it if you are going to read this. I know somebody that I know said in their review that it kind of goes against everything that the books have been saying before this. And I do see where they're coming from, but I'm interested to see how it will play out in the next few books. So I don't know. It was intriguing. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know, it just felt lackluster compared to some of the other ones. So I still did really like it. So 4 stars, but not my favorite of the series, definitely. Next up is another library book, and the first book about cats. And this is We'll Prescribe You a Cat by Sayu Ishida? I don't actually know if that's how you pronounce that, and the internet was not very helpful. So this is a Japanese book. It was translated by E. Madison Shimoda. And we have here several short stories of people going to this clinic that is like a very strange clinic. You can't find it on the internet. You just kind of hear about it through the grapevine. And you might not always necessarily be able to find it because the address is vague at best. But when you go to this clinic, they will prescribe you a cat. And you get to take the cat for X number of days and take care of it. And through this, the problems of the characters are worked out. This was so sweet. There is this kind of through plot involving, oh my God, some cats who had been born to a breeder, and it was in the space that the clinic is now in. And it was like really horrible, and they had to be rescued, and only 2 survived. So this is a through plot through the whole series because this is a series. And did I read book 2 in February? I did. But I really enjoyed this. It was just so sweet and like feel good. And I loved getting to know the different cats. And it was really nice. So I gave this 4 stars. Next up was another for Feb Regency. This is The Woman of Color by Anonymous from 1808. So this is about a young woman named Olivia Fairfield, who is a mixed-race Jamaican heiress coming over to England to marry her cousin as per her father's will. And this was just really interesting. I wanted to read this last year and just never got to it, so it was kind of top priority for this year. And I'm so glad that I finally got to read it because there were so many fascinating things about race and humanity and the different attitudes of people. And it was just really worth reading. The story is like not the most exciting, probably. I was surprised there's a bit of sensationalism in it, which it's very, very early to have something that sensational. But yeah, I really, it's what you're here for is this kind of commentary. And this edition, the Broadview edition, which has been edited by Lyndon J. Dominic, is utterly fantastic. The introduction, amazing. And then in the back, we have all these appendices with different literature about women of color in literature from this time, historical context, things about epistolary novels, because this is an epistolary novel. And it was just super interesting. And yeah, I'm really glad I read it. I think it's worth reading if you're interested in the time period, definitely. And there is this question of, well, who wrote it? Was it a woman of color who wrote it? Maybe. We don't know. But I'd be very interested to see if anything about the authorship of this comes to light. So I gave this 4 stars. And the next book is Will Prescribe You Another Cat by Sayushida. Again, I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right. Also translated by E. Madison Shimoda. So obviously this is the follow-up to Will Prescribe You a Cat. And it is more of the same, people going to this clinic and bringing home cats as a prescription. And we see more of the kind of overarching plot play out. And again, it was just lovely. It was feel good, like bittersweet, but also just lovely. And I gave it 4 stars. Next was my February Elizabeth Gaskell book, and this is The Moorland Cottage. Again, I have a whole video on this, though it does have spoilers. This is the story of Maggie Brown, who has a brother that is a jerk and who falls in love with a neighbor, Frank, and kind of the story of her having to choose what is right in a situation that requires her to choose between her brother and her lover. This was lovely. I gave it 4 stars. Again, I have a whole video on it if you want to hear more, but it's very short. It's like Mill on the Floss with a better ending. is how I would describe it. Like, the plot is not exactly the same, but the concepts. This apparently did influence George Eliot quite a bit. So if you ever read The Mill on the Floss and were like, wow, you know, this is great except that ending really sucks, go for The Moorland Cottage. The ending's way better. Then I decided to go for some horror with the Southern Book Club's Guide to Slaying Vampires by Grady Hendrix. This is my, I think, 4th Hendrix book. And I've actually read part of this before on audiobook several years ago, and then had to return it to Libby, and I wasn't in the mood for an audiobook, and it was a whole thing. But we are in South Carolina in the 90s, following a group of women who have this book club that reads true crime stuff. And we're really focusing on Patricia, who is a former nurse, now housewife, mother of 2 children, wife of, I believe he's a psychiatrist, and then also caregiver to her mother-in-law. And some stuff starts happening, and it's vampires, as you can tell from the title. And she is trying to convince her book club, hey, there's something wrong here and I need your help. And there is something off about this guy that has just moved to town. This was so much fun. The perfect combination of campy and creepy. There were some terrifying scenes in here, like some just real heart-stopping moments. But I also really enjoyed the commentary this book is making on the attitudes toward women in the 90s, and the kind of just sexism that was going on. It was just really good. And I don't even know how else to describe it. I just really like Hendrix's writing. I don't know how he does it, but he writes female characters so well. I'm like, huh. He just does a really good job. So yeah, I loved this. Not a perfect book. There were some things that I was like, oh, it could have been better. Like, I think some things at the end could have been more, I don't know. Like, there was some stuff at the end that felt anticlimactic to me, but overall, I really enjoyed it, and I gave it 4.5 stars. Decided to keep on the kind of creepy train with The 13th Child by Erin A. Craig. This is a young adult fairy tale retelling of the Brothers Grimm story Godfather Death. We are following somebody, Hazel, who is the goddaughter of the dreaded End, he is referred to as the god of death. And she is given the ability to see what is wrong with a person when she touches them, and then she can use that information to save them. But if she sees a skull, she's supposed to not just let them die, but give them a poison so that they die quicker. And this becomes a conflict when she is brought in to heal the king of the country. I had a lot of fun with this. It's such a fascinating world. Erin A. Craig wrote one of my favorite retellings of the 12 Dancing Princesses, House of Salt and Sorrows. I think this was not as good as House of Salt and Sorrows, but it definitely kept up with like the kind of creepy gothic vibe. Although not quite as creepy as House of Salt and Sorrows. House of Salt and Sorrows almost borders on horror, whereas this I did not think did. But definitely some creep factor going on. Fascinating world. I liked Hazel as a character. And it's just a very interesting retelling because you never see this story get a retelling. Honestly, I feel like the only reason I'm familiar with this fairy tale is I actually studied it in my intro to lit class in college. Like randomly, we were talking about fairy tales, and that's the one that was in the textbook. So yeah, no, this was a fascinating retelling and I really enjoyed it. 4 stars. So the next book has more vampires. This was for the other event I was participating in, the Neglected Victorian Bestsellers read-along hosted by Roy from Roy Reads Anything. This is The Blood of the Vampire by Florence Marryat, published in 1897, so the same year as Dracula. And we have here Harriet Brandt, who is a mixed race heiress coming over from Jamaica. Does that sound familiar? And she is a psychic vampire, meaning she feeds not on blood, but on the energy of other people. And she does not know this. She's doing it entirely unconsciously. But people who spend time with her find that they just get really tired and they eventually start to get really sick and deteriorate. This is a really strange little book. It was interesting for me to read it in the same month as The Woman of Color because, of course, there are some very similar, there's like a similar setup, although The Woman of Color does not involve vampires, obviously. And I would say that The Woman of Color's attitudes towards people of color is a lot more positive than The Blood of the Vampire. There are some questionable depictions involving race in this book. Like, I'm not gonna lie, it's 1897. However, it is really interesting, like, from the idea of vampire fiction, first of all, to attitudes of race in the 19th century. A lot about, like, genes and heredity. If I'm saying that right, I don't even know. I know a woman who is attending a conference that I am going to who is presenting on eugenics in The Blood of the Vampire and kind of this idea of inheriting bad genes. So that it's super interesting in that regard. And also it's considered kind of like a new woman novel. It's like a new woman vampire novel. So it's like doing a lot of interesting things, but it's hard to know if I really liked it. I did find the ending a bit lackluster. I was like, oh, come on, that's all you're gonna give me? It's super interesting to read in conjunction with Dracula too, because of this idea of the other coming from outside of England into England. But anyway, yeah, so it's interesting. I don't really know if I necessarily liked it that much. I was entertained, certainly. So I gave it 3 stars. And then we went back to cats with Agnes Aubert's Mystical Cat Shelter by Heather Fawcett. And I am aware that Agnes here should probably be pronounced in the French way because this is set in Montreal. My French pronunciation sucks on a good day, and today is not a good day with this cold going on, so I'm not even gonna try. I loved Heather Fawcett's Emily Wilde trilogy, and I was so excited that she was writing a book with cats. I was the first in the hold queue for when it came out in the library. I was like #1 getting this book, and it was great. It is, again, another story that I think will work very much for people who like Howl's Moving Castle. Both the book by Diana Wynne Jones and the movie done by Miyazaki, the Studio Ghibli movie. Ghibli? I never know. I don't know. We are following Agnes, who runs a cat shelter in Montreal. Her building has been destroyed by some magicians that were just dueling and weren't being very respectful of other people's property. So she needs to find a new place to rent. And nobody wants to rent to her because she comes with like 40-something cats. She eventually finds this one place that has really good rent, but like it's kind of weird. And people are a little bit like, it's kind of sketchy. And none of the tenants seem to stay very long. But hey, the rent is really cheap and they don't seem to mind her cats. So she moves in, and it turns out that this building is owned by one of the most infamous magicians, who is using her cat shelter as a front for his magic shop. And shenanigans ensue. I loved this. I loved the cats in this. I loved Agnes. I love her passion about the cats. She, in addition to the shelter cats, she has 2 cats that like just kind of live permanently with her. Banshee, who is this cat that is always meowing but never actually makes any noise. So like her mouth is opening, she's clearly making noise, but nothing's coming out. And then we have His Majesty, who, as you might expect, is this very regal looking, large, fluffy boy who rules the shelter with an iron fist. And Agnes runs the shelter with the help of her sister Elise. And of course, her and the magician, whose name I don't have, Locke, feel very attracted to each other. I love this. It was perfect. It's not perfect. There's flaws. I don't care about the flaws is the thing, you see, because I just had such a good time. It's more on the low stakes end of fantasy. I would even say lower stakes than Emily Wilde, definitely. But it's just so cozy, and also cats. I would highly recommend this. And next up we have more cats. This is The Curious Kitten at the Chibineko Kitchen by Yuta Takahashi, translated by Kat Anderson. This is about this restaurant that does remembrance meals. And the people who come, who have lost someone and are doing a remembrance meal for their loved one, find that they are able to see and speak with the deceased loved one for as long as the steam is coming off of the food. So we start really with Kotoko, who is a young woman who has lost her brother. And then she becomes involved with the restaurant. And the restaurant, of course, has an adorable cat. Obviously, as you can see, and as you can tell from the title. I don't remember the cat's name, though. Chibi. Since it's, the Chibineko Kitchen. Yeah, okay. Anyway, this was so lovely. Again, just like really heartwarming. It's interconnected short stories. So we have a different person is the focus of each chapter, but they are all connected through, like we see Kotoko throughout the whole thing. I don't know, it's just so, again, like kind of bittersweet, but heartwarming, and I felt a lot of connection with Kotoko, of course, because she is mourning the loss of her older brother, and I have lost my older brother, so it was just like, it was really beautiful, and I cried. I cried. So this was 4 stars. Also, great feature of it. It has recipes. So each chapter and each person's story has a different food that is made as a remembrance meal. And at the end of the chapter, you get the recipe for it. So I actually made one of the recipes for sukiyaki don, which is beef hot pot served over rice. I made it on, I guess it was Saturday, and it came out so good. Like, really, really good. So I got a new recipe out of this too, as well as a really sweet, heartwarming, tear-inducing book. So yeah, 4 stars. And then we had my final read for Feb Regency. This is Jane Austen's Sanditon, a continuation by Anna Austen Lefroy. When Jane Austen died, her literary remains were split up between various family members. And Anna Austen Lefroy received several things, but one of them was the unfinished manuscript of Sanditon. So at some point, we're not entirely sure when, but it seems to be between 1830 and 1860, she tried to write a continuation. However, she never finished her continuation, so it's an unfinished continuation of an unfinished novel. Which, try saying that 5 times fast. This is very interesting. Like, it's interesting to see where she thought the story would go, but unfortunately the story really never gets started. She develops more of the characters, and she adds a few characters even, too. But literally it ends with Sidney Parker getting called away to deal with something, and Charlotte Haywood thinking, what could have happened? And then it's done. It's like, well, what did happen? So it's like, it's kind of infuriating to have this, like, you're approaching something that is the continuation of an unfinished novel. So you're like, let's see what this person thinks happens. But then you don't even get that. So yeah, the introduction by Mary Gaither Marshall is super interesting. And I really appreciated that. So I gave this 3 stars because, again, super great introduction. Like, I can see the start of a great story here, but it's not finished, which is kind of how I felt about Mary Hamilton. It was like, you have like a great start of something, but you never delivered on any of it. Which is what I'm going to be talking about in my conference paper, really, is that as the literary heir of Jane Austen, she is not really successful because she can never move beyond her aunt's advice of gathering your character or collecting your characters. Like 1, 2, or 3 families in a small town. Like, she's never able to move beyond that point. So that's kind of my argument in my conference paper. It needs to be expanded out, obviously, and I need to do more reading and actually write the darn thing, but that's not a problem until early May, so I don't need to worry about that right now. But yeah, it's interesting, but like, like an unfinished continuation of an unfinished. So yeah, 3 stars. And then we get to the final book that I finished, and this is more cats. This is The Blanket Cats by Kiyoshi Shigematsu, translated by Jessie Kirkwood. And in this, we have a shop that rents cats out for 3 days, and we again have a series of short stories about the people that rent these cats. I found the first 2 story, actually, maybe it was even the first 3. Is there a table of contents? No, yeah, there is. Yeah, I found the first 3 stories kind of underwhelming, but the next 4 were so good. Particularly, the 4th one, The Cat Who Knew How to Pretend, and then the 6th one, The Cat Who Went on a Journey. Those were so good. The Cat Who Knew How to Pretend is about this family who rents this cat because their elderly grandmother who has dementia is coming to stay with them for 3 days before she goes to a nursing home. And she adored their cat, Ron, but Ron has passed away. So they're looking to rent a look-alike just so they can get through this 3 days without Grandma getting upset. And it was just such a beautiful look at family and dealing with an older family member who is deteriorating mentally. And it was lovely. And then the cat who went on a journey, is that how they phrased it? Yeah, the cat who went on a journey focuses on the cat, actually, named Tabby, who ends up running away from the person who rents him and going on this journey with these two children that he finds, who are going to their mother's house. They have run away from their father's house where they have a new stepmother, and they are going to their mother's house. And so he goes with them. And that was really lovely too. Again, really lovely look at family and like the way that cats interact with people. It was just lovely. So I gave this collection 4 stars. And yeah, it was just, I did not cry in this one, but I came close. Especially because, again, the cat who knew how to pretend really resonated, because I do have some older family members who are deteriorating with dementia. So yeah, I don't know. It was just lovely. I've had a great time with these cat books. I don't know. New favorite genre, maybe? Books about cats? That is all the books that I finished, but I do have 3 books that I DNF'd this month. And the first of those was one of my most anticipated releases of the year, which is really disappointing. This is The School of Night by Karl Ove Knausgaard. I don't know if that's pronounced correctly. I forget who translated this one. I think it was like Martin Aiken or Atkin or something like that. But this is following Christian, who is a Norwegian young man in the 80s who moves to London to go to photography school. And eventually he is apparently bargaining with the devil, and it is about dark temptations and moral depravity. I did not get that far. There was a scene with a cat that I couldn't deal with. I needed to stop. It was also really rough being in Christian's head. He is the narrator, and he is a sociopath. So being in his head was really rough. And like, honestly, even though it was rough being in his head, I probably would have continued because I was interested to see stuff play out, but the scene with the cat just, nope. It can't even be described as violence towards animals though, because the cat is already deceased. He literally steals a dead cat from a vet's office. It's used for a photography project. But even with the cat already being deceased, I could not deal with it. I was like, nope, we're done here. I was like 100 and something pages in, I think, but yeah, nope, can't do it. And then the next one that I DNF'd was Hot Wax by M.L. Rhea, which was one of my most anticipated releases of 2025. I loved her book, If We Were Villains, and I enjoyed her novella, The Graveyard Shift. This is about Suzanne, whose father is in a rock and roll band in the late 80s, and we are following her both in the 80s as a child, but then also as an adult after her father has died, and I just couldn't get into it. Like, I think I wasn't even that far in. I was like 20 pages in, maybe. And I don't know. I wasn't interested, so I was like, I'm just gonna stop. It just wasn't for me. And then the final book that I didn't finish is The Wax Child by Olga Ravn. I don't know if that's how you pronounce that, because I can't pronounce anything. Oh, this is the one that's translated by Martin Aitken. He translated The School of Night then. I have no idea. Anyway, super interesting, and I actually heard a few people talk about it here on BookTube, which is why I want to check it out. It is a historical fiction horror book set in Denmark in a rather early period. I don't know exactly what year, but following a woman who's accused of witchcraft, and it is narrated by this wax doll that she made. Super interesting concept. And this is a beautifully written book. Raven is also a poet, and I would be very interested to check out her poetry, although I don't think any of it's been translated into English. At least not that I could see on Goodreads. However, the narrator, I had a difficult time with the narrator. Especially because there was this one scene, which is when I decided to DNF. It was a bunch of women were gathered together, and they were doing something to do with, I think they were like making cloth, I don't remember. But they were telling a story about someone. And it was like, the way that she was the wax doll was narrating it was like, someone said, and then they said, and someone said, like there were no names for who was speaking, and all the women kept like interrupting each other, and it was just like, oh, someone said they had to leave. Someone said, oh no, this is what happened. Someone said, ah, yes, that's how it happened. And I was just like, I can't deal with this anymore. And I stopped. But yeah, this is one, I don't know, maybe I could maybe go back to, because it is really fascinating and really well written. That one scene, I was just like, I can't deal with this. I'm like looking to see if I can find it. I was like 40 something pages in. Yeah, okay. Did she have children, someone said? Did she have sisters, someone said? What were her neighbors like, someone said? Was she pursued on the moor by a long-legged black poodle hound that loped at the side of her carriage whenever she drove, someone said? If she was, it's been missed out, someone said. Like, I was like, I can't deal with the someone saids. So yeah, I was like, no, okay, I'm done. So yeah, I don't know. I could go back to it maybe. And I would be interested in checking out other stuff by this author. So that is what I read in February. This has been a really long video. It is at 50 minutes right now. Hopefully that will be cut down in editing. Yeah, let me know down in the comments, have you read any of these? What did you think of them? What did you read in February? If you enjoyed this video, please don't forget to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to see more of my bookish content. It has been great chatting with you. I will see you soon. Bye.